The House Rules, but down today. House Rules Committee meeting early this morning, try to move President Trump's reconciliation package of priorities forward. Emily Wilkins joins us now for the latest. Hey, Emily.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, well, they've been going since 1 a.m. and behind the scenes, Republican leaders on the Hill are rushing to try to finalize changes that will get some of these holdouts to yes and on board with this bill. We've been covering these days of negotiations, but this is really the part where they have to finalize the changes, show their work, and actually put pen to paper. We did get the details on at least one of those changes, a new cap for state and local deductions. NBC News is now reporting a new tentative agreement that would raise the SALT cap to $40,000 for those making $500,000 or less. Now, under the plan, both the cap and the income level would increase by 1% over a period of 10 years, and then they would lock in those final numbers, and that would become the new baseline. Also, overnight, we got a new analysis from the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. It shows that the average American household would see an increase in resources provided to them by the government under this mega bill. However, the report breaks it down a little bit more and finds that resources would decrease for households in the lowest tenth of the income distribution, whereas resources would increase for households that are in the highest tenth. The Speaker, Mike Johnson, told reporters yesterday that a vote could happen as soon as tonight. And guys, this means lawmakers, especially those on this committee here, might be in for a very long day.
I got frustrated looking once again, and I realize the whole system is kind of not great, Emily. You barely get through 100 days, and what's controlling Republicans in the House right now is an election in a year and a half or 2 years or whatever it is. So, when Republicans now have the presidency, the Senate, and the House, they have a chance to do something, but they can't do it. They can't do what they need to do. And I'm talking about Medicaid. I'm talking about the way that that's set up. Whether it's SALT that holds it back, you've got Freedom Caucus on one side, and you've got Republicans that were in purple districts on the other side. They're, at loggerheads. And then the president comes in and what did he say? Stay the F away from Medicaid or something? What was the quote? Emily? I mean, and there.
He didn't. He used the word. He said the word. But yeah, you got it. Yeah, and I mean, there are some, this is kind of what we saw. It reminds me of what we saw with Democrats when it came to passing Biden's big agenda. They had all these ideas for what it was going to be, but the fact of the matter is that they had narrow majorities, and to get consensus, a lot had to be left on the cutting room floor. And I think that's what you're seeing this time, too. And I think part of Trump coming to the Hill yesterday was reminding members that, hey, you might not get everything you want from this bill, but it is going to be a win. It does need to get done. And certainly these members are cognizant that if they don't move on this, you will see a tax increase for millions of Americans out there. And so they've got that pressure, they've got the debt limit pressure, and they've got reasons to try and get this done, even if it doesn't have everything they want. With the
$37 trillion, and S&P is already there, but with the Moody's downgrade, front and center again, we have a spending problem. So the majority of what we're seeing here is the president getting his way on a lot of new tax cuts, extending the old tax cuts, doing the new. So you're counting on future growth being higher to try to rein in the deficit spending instead of the spending itself. So that's a big ask, and it's not what Republicans should be doing normally. If you're going to cut taxes, you need to cut spending at the same time. If you want to raise taxes, fine, to try and do it, but then you're not going to have the growth. But the way Medicaid operates now, Emily, and you know this, it was through Obamacare, it has now become the go-to entitlement for a lot of able-bodied working-age men that just sit at home, men and women that are sitting at home. I understand the Democrats, they're still going to demagogue it. So the Republicans probably will still lose the House in 2 years, but they're unable to do anything because they're afraid of that election already.
And Joe, I have talked to members who are very frustrated that this bill isn't doing more with entitlement cuts. I mean, obviously, this is something that both Democrats and Republicans, if you speak with them, they say, yes, we recognize that a lot of our debt is coming from the fact that these programs continue to balloon. The difficult thing is that no one wants to blink first. The current political environment is that if you go even talk about cuts to Medicaid, you are going to have attack ads run against you. This is really a game that both sides of the aisle play.
Right.
And, it'll be very interesting to see if and when there is a point that is reached where Congress does feel the need to act in a bipartisan manner on this one.
Our forefathers, it was a great idea, do it every 2 years, which really makes it almost impossible to make any huge moves, because even you finally get all three branches of government, and you're already worried about losing one of those branches in 2 years. So you really don't, and it happened, as you said, to Democrats as well. Emily, but maybe
Joe, I feel I could do a whole monologue about all the things that are preventing bipartisan compromise in D.C. Yeah. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of underlying factors on these members. But, I mean, at this point, at least I will say from some of the conversations, there was a shift in tone after Trump came yesterday. You still had a lot of members who were no. You still have a lot of members who are pushing for what they want. But based on kind of what I've been hearing from my sources, just being in the Capitol, there is a lot more optimism, at least on the Republican side, that they can get this to pass the House. Of course, then you have the entire Senate process, which is weighing on a lot of minds of members. They know that anything they pass here could wind up getting changed in the other chamber and wind up presenting them with another tough vote, say, sometime in July. And
you got the SALT guys. I mean, either you shouldn't be double taxed, or you should be 40,000, 30, 50. Andrew, what you don't want? Don't you think that you just leave the SALT the way it is, or not? You want this? What is this? $40,000 going up 1% a year? That's all budget based, right, Emily? So it doesn't. You don't have to. Nothing happens too badly right away for the deficit on that as well. Why do blue state Republicans? Why is it so important to them to get this back in New Jersey?
What I would do,
because they're the ones who help make the majority.
But what I would do is,
why is it so important? Right. Go ahead.
I would do something slightly different. This is a philosophical thing. To the degree that we think that every state should just be even Steven, but given that the budgets of these states have ballooned and shifted and changed, but as it relates to this, right, like everyone knows what this is, I think I would set up some kind of 10-year deal, meaning where these deductions eventually go away, but over a period of time.
So to get your act together over 10 years?
Basically, would say to the states, look, we're no longer doing SALT. If in fact, that's the position. If the position is no SALT, I think, by the way, I would have this is a similar view about tariffs. If you said you wanted to do tariffs, I'd say, okay, you want to get to 10% tariffs? Let's do that over 3 years. Every company in America knows what the deal is. They can get their affairs in order, and people can actually act in rational ways, and they don't have to have a freak out. That would be my approach to both of those things, frankly.
But Emily, if you're going to extend the old tax cuts, which, the reason that they expired was budgetary in the first place. So now you're going to extend those, so that's going to be that's going to increase the deficit. Then you layer on all these new tax cuts, these ideas that come to the president from time to time, but then you don't cut the spending. How does it, and you just got to downgrade, and whether Moody's, who knows, what that was about. But we know we're at $37 trillion. You're just putting all your cards on hoping for this growth to come from the tax cuts, I guess. Is that how it works?
That is part of it. I mean, Republicans will point out, and this is true, they are cutting spending in this bill. The House had to find $1.5 trillion of spending cuts. I'm not sure what the actual number that's in this bill, but it is about there. And they have found places to do the cuts. Of course, again, we'll see what happens once this bill gets through the Senate.
Fuzzy math, isn't it?
But at the same point, I mean, there are real cuts in here. At the same point, it is true. I mean, if you score this bill, it is going to add several trillion dollars to the deficit at this point. And yes, they are expecting for GDP as well as other cuts, things like DOGE. They've mentioned tariffs, that they will sort of cover that. But yes, there is a real concern here. I think there's also just a realization that if they don't get this done, taxes go up on Americans. And there is a wide sense across the caucus, probably even within Democrats, too, if they were a part of this, that they absolutely do not want that to happen.